Hello, my name is Silas Kayuha, and I had my primary source as Game of Thrones, the very popular show from that finished a few years ago. Well, this show takes place in a fantasy world that is called Westeros, and it does include dragons and the undead. However, it is very realistic and it mainly focuses on the politics and the interactions between royal families that are ruling over certain castles or different parts of Westeros, even outside of that, in other parts of the world. Is the fantasy world significant to the real world? In the fantasy world, women are held to a very traditional and stereotypical standard. Many of them play the role as a housewife or essentially staying at home, raising the kids. Even those who are queens, that is what they're seen to do. And many of the alliances are formed by a king marrying their daughter off to another king if they want to marry. So many of the daughters are seen as just a pawn to be used in the political gain of the family to move up in the world. And women such as like Daenerys and Cersei are seen as gaining seats of power, and which is very prominent now as we are pushing for women's rights and holding higher positions of office and combating those stereotypical and traditional archetypes that like women have been held down to for centuries. The interesting or troubling aspects that I found in Game of Thrones as I analyzed them. So once again, the daughters are used as bargaining chips to create alliances, and many of those marriages that are arranged to create these alliances are unwanted. They are forced into them, and they do not have a choice. And when they become the queen or princess of that in that family, they don't hold much power. They're seen mainly to give their husband sons to carry on their bloodline, or even daughters to then create more alliances after that. And prominent female characters such as Daenerys Targaryen have become symbols of inspiration for female empowerment. So Daenerys was originally in an arranged marriage, but following the death of her husband, she took power of their tribe and was able to start enacting change and conquering lands that had slaves and freeing them and gaining titles such as the Breaker of Chains. And when she became so prominent for women and people were very inspired by her, the filmmakers made her very corrupt by the end. So she kind of like got lost in her search, or not her search, but her road to enacting the change that she wanted to make and sort of breaking the wheel of the patriarchal society. And Daenerys once again used her arranged marriage to seize power and enact her desired influence following the death of her husband. So now we have the claims from secondary sources. So, although prominent female characters may be representative of a more modernized outlook on gender equality, they do so through the relationships they have with men. And so, essentially, what this is saying is that in the show, if it weren't for the male characters or the relationships that the women have with men, they would not be able to enact the change that they had, such as like using the power that the men hold, whether it's property or their position, to enact change. There is a consistent representation of women in a stereotypical manner that prevails as the show's main message when it comes to gender. So I would say this is the majority of how women are depicted as their, and this ties in with the next point, that there is a consistent sexualization of the majority of female characters seen throughout the show, and it's definitely detrimental to the image of women throughout the show. However, I will get to that point later when I relate that to my own claims through my thesis and what I found through my analysis. Additionally, the show's main depiction of power is patriarchal, and Daenerys is used to demonstrate this. And so mainly the power seen is through kings taking lands, using armies to conquer different pawns, or using not necessarily using the army to fight, but as a show of dominance or intimidation to force the smaller force into political debates or political agreements. And the show represents a world with a history of stereotypical treatment of women, but allows characters such as Daenerys to empower women by overcoming these obstacles and breaking down traditional gender roles. So this very much ties into my claims that I will bring up and quite soon. So the immense amount of adversity women face amplifies the influence of prominent female characters have on breaking traditional gender roles. And so, such as Daenerys taking advantage of the patriarchal system to enact change through power, and Cersei enacts change from behind the scenes and manipulating those in power. So Daenerys is demonstrating the patriarchal depiction of power because she uses an army and intimidation to enact change and take over certain lands to free slaves that she does not want to have remain there. And Cersei utilizes her position of influence as she is the queen of Westeros. She is the queen in King's Landing, which is the ruler over the Seven Kingdoms, the main political family. And so she utilizes her position, whether when her sons come into power as king, she kind of manipulates them and uses their position to enact the changes that she wishes to make. In my thesis, after conducting my own analysis of Game of Thrones by looking through the scope of prominent female characters such as Daenerys Targaryen and Cersei Lannister, I have come to understand that the stereotypical depiction of and sexualization of women, which is so common throughout the show, actually amplifies the impact such characters have on empowering women and breaking down traditional gender roles. And mainly this is because those stereotypical depictions and their sexualization that is very common really holds most women down much more than is in our traditional society, and they are still able to take advantage of their situation and really push their way into an influential position even though they were facing so much adversity. And these are some questions.